Now, this is an older movie, but y'all remember that movie called Hope Floats? Yeah, right? It's like, yeah, with Sandra Bullock. It's been a minute since it came out, but I think that is one of the best titles of a movie ever. You know, if you don't remember the movie, she goes through a divorce. Her life gets turned upside down. She's got to move back home and like restart her life. But the title is Hope Floats. And isn't that apt for what hope really does? I love that. Along with that, I have a friend named Joy, and she talks about how in hard times we hold hope for one another. Like maybe I'm going through a hard time and I am discouraged and I am frustrated and I am low. And so maybe I don't have the capacity anymore to hope for myself. But Joy or any of my friends can talk with me and maybe not tell me everything's going to be okay, but just knowing that they are with me and by my side, that helps hold my hope until I'm in a better place spiritually, until I'm in a better place emotionally, until I'm in a better place mentally. And then I can pick that hope back up and carry my own hope with me again. But I've got somebody beside me helping me carry it the whole time so that when I'm ready for it, when I need it the most, it's still there. Now, I know you guys already know this, but it's not just individuals that can hope for one another, communities too. A community can hold hope for the community. And so that's really what we hear in our text this morning in Isaiah 55. Let's hear that for a minute. Oh, hear, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen so that you may live. I will make with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast, sure love for David. See, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. See, you shall call your nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you because of the Lord your God and Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their way, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them return to the Lord, so that he may have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so that my word be that goes out from my mouth, and it shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands, and instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress. Instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle, and it shall be to the Lord for a memorial, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. Now that maybe is not along the lines of our typical text. That is poetry. It might sound better and more poetic in the original ancient Hebrew. I'm not sure. I don't read it very well. But it is poetry. It is vivid poetry because Israel had a hope problem. They had been exiled from their country. They had been in Babylon for the last 50 to 70 years. They had been away from home for at least a couple generations, and it was now time for them to return. This is like, let's think about this for a minute. This is like we return to the land of our great-grandparents. Would you want to do that? Now, I got to tell you, I don't know anything about farms in Kentucky or cattle ranches in eastern Colorado. So for me to like leave everything I know and uproot my life right now and travel on that way, that would be hard, wouldn't it? I'd have no idea how to do that. And that's where they were. There was no actual living memory of the time before when they had been in their own land. So God was asking them to uproot themselves, everything that they were familiar with. This was no longer a foreign country to them. This is what was familiar. And so God was asking them to uproot themselves, family and everything, all their stuff, their jobs, everything. Leave it, leave all the familiar things and return to what? Something that no one in their generation knew how to do. Now, they had grown up hearing stories about this time before, but they didn't know it. And so we can easily imagine that that was a pretty terrifying and difficult thing for them to do. But interestingly, this text is a poetry of hope. It's a poetry that somebody said is pointing the way homeward with confidence and expectancy. It is God saying, when you go home, this is all of the beautiful and bountiful things that you will receive. And later readers saw it as more than poetry. They saw it as more than history, more than something that happened hundreds and thousands of years ago, because it's a poetry that's pragmatic and spiritual, that describes the spiritual journey of each one of us when we go from our alienations, when we go from our places where we feel like we don't belong, where we feel like we're scared and we're nervous and we're having difficulties, when we go from that and we journey home, we journey into God. Because ultimately, God is the holder of all of our hopes. Now, I know that's not easy, right? I mean, it's easy to say that God is the holder of all of our hopes, because of course God is the holder of all of our hopes. What else am I going to say, right? Like, that's kind of what you expect your pastor to say from the pulpit. God is the holder of all of your hopes. Well, what about when the rubber meets the road, right? What about when somebody dies? When somebody gets sick, somebody gets cancer, you lose your job, your marriage is on the rocks, your retirement portfolio goes down the tubes, right? What happens then? Is God still the holder of all of your hopes? Like, how does that work? It doesn't feel like God's doing a good job hanging on to those hopes when things like that happen. A lot of us are fretting about an election just around the corner. How many days away is that? And we are like holding our collective breath, whatever side you're on. People are really worried and scared and nervous. We can kind of feel it in our media that people are are really scared and nervous. Is God holding on to our hopes in that situation? And what, we're supposed to just keep hanging on to our own hope when things are falling apart? Yeah, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. Man, cling to it with your fingernails if that's what you've got to do. Because hope, we've said this before, hope is not something that's delicate. Hope can be battered. Hope can be bruised. Hope can get dirty on the ground and jump back up and start fighting again. Because hope is stronger than what we think it is. And hard times have a way of stripping away the non-essentials and helping us realize what's truly important. So we're not holding everything. We're just holding what we need. Now, when I say that hard times have a way of stripping away the non-essentials and making us realize what's important, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that God is giving us hard things so we learn a lesson, all right? That's not true. Or God makes us stronger. That's not true. Or God doesn't give us more than we can handle, which, by the way, is not in the Bible. But there's no denying that hard times have a way of helping us realize what's most important very quickly. And we can realize that our faith is one of the most important things right away. We can realize, maybe sometimes not very quickly, that God is right there with us, holding that hope with us too. Now, God's hope is much more than the bursting tables full of food and bountiful crops and joyful celebrations that are talked about in Isaiah 55. There's lots of other texts that talk about that. By the way, you might remember the phrase from Deuteronomy, the land of milk and honey. There you go, bust it out. Deuteronomy, if that's on your bingo card for preaching this year. Done Revelations and Deuteronomy in the same year, y'all. Hold on, we are going for a ride. But Proverbs also talks about wisdom and how wisdom how food is used as an analogy of wisdom and wise teaching, and how the bounty of that leaves us not even wanting for more because it is so much and so wonderful, and how that is our spiritual development that is nourished and overflowing. And they are all saying that God's banquet, this image of food, this image of bountiful harvest, this image of more than we could possibly use, is saying that God's banquet not only recalls the promise of the earth's fertility, but also the spiritual richness of our life in God. The spiritual richness of our life in God can be overflowing. It can be so abundant. It is beyond what we thought we could ever need. So the question we might have this morning, which would be a fair one, is how does this all relate to here and now? How does this relate to Shawnee community in this time? Now, I know that the season that we're in as a church feels a little lean, does it not? I talk about abundance up here, but it may not feel like we got a lot of abundance hanging around this place. It might feel a little lean. It might feel like a season of struggle for Shawnee community. Might feel like a season for struggle for just about every church out there, by the way. It has every year. We're in the red every month. How does that feel to be reminded of that during worship? Doesn't feel very good, does it? feels a little scary and discouraging. We have these town halls every month, and we keep seeing that kind of needle go down instead of up. How does that feel? Does that feel a little bit like a gut punch every month? Does it feel discouraging? Do you look at that at a town hall and look at the screen when Marshall presents those numbers? Do you sit there and think, how on earth are we ever going to catch that up? Like, what's the point of me even giving my little bit? Because I don't have $40,000 to just write a check and pop it in the offering plate and fix what's going on. And so I might even keep what's in my pocket here and put it to use somewhere else, because this is scary. We're never going to get caught up. We're never going to fix this. I just want you to put a pin in that, all right? Because I have some things to say about that, just in case you weren't expecting the other half, right? Regional Assembly was this weekend, and Friday night I went to worship, and Reverend Amy Shoemaker, who's one of our regional ministers, reminded us present of Ephesians 4:3. You are one body, you are one spirit, and God has called you in one hope. Do you hear that? So it's not just in the Old Testament, in this poetic language that most of us can't relate to about bountiful harvests and beautiful imagery. It is right here in Ephesians that we are one body, and God has called us together in one hope. There's that word again, hope. It's like it's important to our spiritual life. Could it be that hope is the bounty that God spreads before us on a never-ending table that is unlimited, that we can go back to again and again and again and get our fill of however many times we need? That hope is the harvest, is the bounty that is overflowing and so abundant that when we all go there over and over and over again, there's just as much left as before we began. She also said something else, and I think it's important for us to remember right here and right now. Besides hope, she said, we didn't make it through the last 4 years to remain the same. We didn't make it through the last 4 years to remain the same. You know what? It's been a pretty hard 4, 5, 6 years. Just in our culture, in our society, and of course that's going to trickle into our churches because we're part of the society. We're not excluded. We don't get to hide from stuff that's happening around us. But we didn't make it just to sit here and throw up our hands and say, well, I guess we can't do this. This congregation, I want to remind you, not everybody knows this, but this congregation has been in worse places than where we are right now. Has it not? Yeah, worse places financially, worse places spiritually, emotionally, everything. Things were they not dark, say, 12 years ago? right? There is still memory about how hard that was and what the struggle was. And what you guys did is amazing. You took that albatross from around your neck, that building that you couldn't afford, and you said, this is not ministry. This is not our identity. This is not how we connect with, the only way that we connect with God. And you got rid of it, and you came here instead. And the result, when you took that risk, when you trusted in faith, when you went to that table of hope again and again and again and again, the result is that hope exploded all around you and became contagious. And so a pocket of people over here had a hope, and then what happened to this pocket of people over here? That hope traveled, did it not? I met somebody on Friday night from Disciple Church Extension Fund, which is one of our general ministries of the church. And he looked at me and he said, "You're the pastor of Shawnee Community." And I went, "Yeah." Like, what do you guys do? You know, what do I not know? And he got very excited. And he goes, "I still talk about you guys. I still talk about you guys when I go to congregations, and I talk about how hard it is and how you can start over and what you can do to rectify your situation and how this congregation is flourishing because of the risk they took." Guys, it's 10 years later, and he is still telling your story. That is phenomenal. So that's one way to go to that bounty of hope and dip into it whenever we need, knowing that there are people out there telling your story. Let's talk about the here and now in these walls. You guys, we keep getting new members. Some of you are new members. I love this. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. We have a growing children's ministry. We have a growing youth ministry. Let me tell you what, half of our congregation is under 18. Did you guys realize that? No wonder we're broke. Those kids cost money and they don't give a dime. What's going on? I tell my friends, half my congregation is under 18, and they look at me like I've just grown a new set of arms. I kid you not, because I can promise you that there are many. This is not a competitive thing, but there are many, many churches that have plenty of old folks, but they haven't seen a kid in years. And half of our people are kids and youth. If that doesn't make you think, God, this church is amazing, I don't know what will. Let's talk about something else that you guys do really well. You are spiritually and emotionally the healthiest congregation that I have ever been a part of. If there is a difficulty, a disagreement in this church, it does not get spread around in a spider web of gossip. It gets taken care of. People talk about the hard things. If somebody has a problem with something I've said or done, and it happens, I know I'm near perfect up here. I always say and do the right thing. And if somebody hears about it and they say, "Yeah, I hear you're frustrated," have you talked to Tabitha about that? I know Tabitha will want to talk to you about. Do you know this is the first church that has ever happened at in 20 years of ministry? If there's a problem, if there is a difficulty, because we're people and we're not always in agreement, guess what happens? Y'all talk it out. You love each other through it. That is, I mean, it's such a basic concept. It's like we love Jesus around here, and we want to follow what Jesus wants for us. We have this beautiful community, and that is not an accident, because was it, for those of you who have been around for a minute, was it always this way? No, it was not. And what did you have to do? Y'all who have been here for a while, you had to work your tails off to make that the culture of this church, and it has stuck around. And the rest of us are reaping the benefits of the bounty of your work. And it is a beautiful thing. So I bring these things up because when you think about our church as being in lean times, and when you think about our church as having a difficulty, and when you think about our church as being in struggle, I want you to place that into perspective, because it is not the whole picture. This is an alive, growing, vibrant, loving church. It is not going anywhere, and it is more than this one little slice of hardship. God, I'm sweating up here. You guys feel like I'm preaching today? I feel like I'm yelling at you. Whew. Speaking of bounty and leanness, I'm going to say a radical, this might be the longest sermon I've ever given you guys. But you're with me. Just call me Amy, 45 minutes. That's the record I've got to break. Oh, that wasn't funny. All right. You guys think I'm serious. We have enough. I am so excited about this, you guys. And I am so nervous about this. We have enough. We have enough money. Do I have your attention? Are you with me? Because I know some of you are looking at me like, all right, I'll walk down that path with you, but gosh, Tabitha, I've seen the same numbers you have. Okay. We have this town hall every month. We've already talked